Welcome back to another episode. In this one we do all our 12 volt fit out and install our solar panels, so stick around and we hope you enjoy. So I've just started planning out where things are going to go for this electrical system. So this is going to be my negative bus bar and the positive bus bar. So I've got a 100 amp circuit breaker for the distribution block, and then I've got a 250 amp circuit breaker for the inverter. I've also got an isolation switch which will cut power to everything if I need to. This is the shunt, so the shunt will go from P to the load side and then the B to the battery, so everything runs through that, so it'll give me a accurate reading of what the battery percentage is at. So now I've just got to mount the battery in and then run all my cabling. So far what I've done is started laying out where most of this wiring is going to go. Now that power point there comes straight from the 15 amp inlet on the outside of the van, so it goes from the 15 amp inlet through that circuit breaker and then down to this outlet, and that's the only one that's run off. So if I plug into a powered site, that's the only one that gets power, because then from there the battery charger will plug into this, and our 2000 watt Renogy Inverter with AC transfer switch plugs into that as well. And then all the other outlets in the van, so that one there, the one in the kitchen, where is it, over there, and there'll be one on the side of the wardrobe, one under the kitchen bench, that'll all run off the inverter. So the reason we done that was that way when we're off grid it'll run directly off the inverter, but because it's got AC transfer or AC input, when you plug into a powered site it'll automatically prioritize mains power in, and it'll power all of those outlets off mains power. So it gives us a few options there. So that's how we've wired that in, or that's how we plan on wiring it in. Got our 20 amp AC charger, and we went with a 20 amp because when you're plugged into a powered site, really the only thing that'll be drawing off the battery still will be the fridge, and it only draws about, I think, 6 amps when it's cycling. So the 20 amp charger will be more than enough to top those batteries off. And then we've got a 40 amp DC with solar input also from iTech. And then we've got our positive bus bar and negative bus bar. They're the Blue Sea ones. I think they're rated to like 270 or 250 or 270 amps, but they've got a really thick copper plate. Whereas some of the other cheap, I bought a cheap red one off eBay, reckoned it was rated to 250 amps, but it was very thin. I wouldn't trust it. I just reckoned it'd get too hot. So these weren't the cheapest. I think they're about 80 bucks each, but I prefer to go a better quality one that I know is not going to melt under high amps. So the way I'm going to have this is positive will go from the battery through this isolation switch, and then from there it'll feed power to this positive bus bar, and then everything will branch off from it. So the red that's hooked up there is for this AC charger. This red here, this 8 BNS cable, that goes through the wall here around and feeds power to my fuse block. So then from there everything else runs off, so the fridge, the fan, the USB outlets, water pump, all that sort of stuff will all come from here. So I haven't screwed this in yet, but you can see it all goes down there. I have to drill a couple of holes through the floor to run wiring down to the water pump and things like that. But and the diesel heater will also go in here. So that's how I've got that set up. We've also made these little cane vents just to help all the electrical stuff vent a little bit, but so far that's what we've got. Doing a little bit more wiring in the van today. This one here is underneath the drawers in the kitchen, so that bit there I already pre-wired before we sheeted the van on the inside, and that one goes to the USB outlets and the SIG socket on the outside of the van. So what I've done is drilled a hole in the floor over under the dinette seat, and I've ran the wiring under the floor up through the floor there in front of the wheel, under the kitchen cabinet, and then through the cabinetry, and put a butt connector and join those two up. And I did the same for the fridge as well, so that runs into the fridge box and then goes under the floor as well. And I'll take you over to under the dinette seat and show you what it looks like there. So this is just in front of the wheel. And so it comes out of the cabinetry under the floor there. I've bought these P-clips, 12mm P-clips from BCF, and I've ran it in split tubing. So it goes through there. Got a couple of holes in the frame. I still need a silicone up around those and where they come out of the floor. They run under the van there and then go up, back up under the floor, inside the van into the dinette seat, which I'll show you now. So coming up out of the floor, the one I just ran then is this one on this side, on the right hand side. So that one there is the USB outlet 12 volt SIG socket on the outside of the van. This one here is the fridge, and that all runs into this distribution block here, or fuse block, 12-way fuse block by Nava. That'll get screwed up to the inside of the dinette seat there. It'll look a bit tidier, but as you can see, if I take you outside, that this USB outlet SIG socket is all powered up now, so there's power running to it, and it's all working. So I've just wired up the output of the BCDC charger. I'm just doing the input now, so that's obviously going to be fed up through there and be siliconed up. But what I'm going to do now is feed some old, the old brake cable I had from the old brakes through the front of the drawbar, and then I'm going to take this cabling to it and then feed it all the way back out, put the Anderson on it, and then push that up, back up through the floor and hook it up on the inside. Okay, so that's all wired up, ready to go. I've got the Anderson on the end and just put one of those dust covers on there. So we got that, and then the elect brakes trailer plug coming out of the drawbar there. So that's all sweet. Goes back up under the floor. Still haven't siliconed it yet, but they'll all be cable tied together, and then that goes up under the floor there. And then I'll just take you inside to show you inside. So I wasn't supposed to put this 60 amp MIDI fuse here. This one was actually supposed to go under the engine bay coming from the battery. The one shown here was actually supposed to be for the solar, but I end up fixing this up later. Okay, so coming up through the floor from the drawbar, going through this 60 amp MIDI fuse, and that goes into the DC input of the 40 amp iTech BCDC charger, and then coming out of the charger, the output, through here, through another 60 amp MIDI fuse, and then into this positive bus bar. So trying to keep things, I'll move this stuff out of the way, but trying to keep things nice and tidy. That way we only have a positive and a negative running back to the battery, and I've still got to try and hide all these somehow, but yeah, that's it so far. So the only other thing to do is the solar input, so it'll go through another 60 amp MIDI fuse. It'll go through the wardrobe, up through the inside of the wardrobe and up out of the top there into the roof. So I haven't done solar yet, but I've got the solar panels ready to go. I just need a weekend to put them on, or one afternoon to put them on, but we'll show you that process anyways. Happy days, we got the DC-DC plugged in except for solar. So it's coming up from the ute to here, and then output through that 60 amp MIDI fuse to here. Which one? This one. So if you look, it's a bit hard to see. You can see the lights on the charger. So I've set it to the lithium battery profile. Now if we come up to the Renogy battery monitor, you can see they're just at idle. It's putting in 18.5 amps, so you can see that that's charging, which is awesome. It all works. So I'll take you down to the ute and show you what I've done at the back of the ute. So I've ran this 8 BNS cable to the back of the ute with this weatherproof trailer plug, and that then, yeah, it goes through the drawbar and up to the DC-DC charger. So all is working, just have the solar to go now. For the DC-DC charger in the Caravan, we had to run some cabling to the back of that trailer plug. So from the positive, I've got a 60 amp MIDI fuse, as it's a 40 amp DC-DC charger, and that runs from the negative and the positive all the way down to the back to that Anderson, which is just here. So I've had to change where the DC-DC charger went. So it was originally up underneath the AC charger and it looked a bit tidier. However, the screws pulled through over some of the corrugations and couldn't put it back in the same spot. So I had to patch it up on the road and just screwed it into the floor there. So now the leads and that don't look as tidy, but it's all good. So one thing I thought I'd mention that I messed up with was with the DC-DC charger, I've got the 25 amp charger, 25 amp iTech charger in the canopy. And I called iTech when I put it in just to double check that I didn't need that ignition switch, the ignition cable. And they said I didn't for that. So I presumed that this would be the same. I thought that would have been the same. And it turns out I did need it. And I thought I didn't. So I cut it short and, heat shrinked it back and everything. And yeah, it turns out I did need it. So because it's 40 amps, it's trying to pull a lot of power. So it was recommended that, you should hook up that ignition switch or ignition cable, whatever it's called. So I'm gonna have to add that in. It works fine sometimes, at other times you'll see on the battery monitor it'll charge up and charge down. So it'll put in 20 and then put in 20 amps and cut down to 0, then put in 20 and cut down to 0. And if you see that fluctuating up and down and clicking on and off, that's a sign that you do need that ignition cable. So it is something I'm gonna have to add. It shouldn't be too bad of a fix. I'll have to just put a butt connector. I'll flip you around, take this heat shrink off and put a butt connector and actually run that down to the front of the drawbar, and then run a ignition cable pick up an ignition source from the ute back to that with a connector. So just make sure that when you go to put yours in that you find out whether you need that or not. So I just wanted to explain how the inverter works. So the inverter we went with was the 2000 watt Renogy Inverter that has AC transfer switch. So we mounted that to the side of the dinette seat there. So basically the way it works is, so from the 15 amp inlet on the outside of the van, it runs through that RCD and down to this outlet here. And that's the only one that's powered by mains power. So basically the way it works is, because this has AC transfer, I've plugged the mains into that and turned it on. So that way when we're hooked up to a mains power source like we are now at a caravan park, it'll automatically prioritize mains and run all the outlets off mains. So the way it works is, coming out of the inverter, out of that power point, it runs through this, well at the moment it's an RCD, but we need to change it to an RVD, which will detect voltage, like leakage to the chassis. So it runs through that, and then through the wardrobe there, through some conduit up to this power point, and then out of the back of that power point, it runs back through the wall and goes to all the other outlets in the van. So then from that outlet, it runs up over the door, and then there's an outlet just under this bench here. So that one there is for our water ionizer, and if we wanted to run the fridge off mains. And then from that one, it goes to the outlet outside, and then it finishes at this outlet with another earth lead going to the aluminium frame as well. So I thought I'd just quickly demonstrate how this AC transfer switch works with the inverter. So at the moment we're plugged into a powered site, and even when the inverter's off, if you plug into mains and the power point's on under the bench seat there for the inverter to plug into, if that's on, and even if the inverter's off, as soon as you plug into a powered site or a power source, mains power, it'll just, all the power points will work because of the way we've wired it up. So, but I just want to demonstrate this with the AC transfer. If I turn the inverter on, nothing changes. And for instance, if there was a blackout and there was no power at the power source there, the mains power, this will simultaneously switch over to draw off the battery without interrupting the charge. So Elle, if you want to unplug that power, I'll just show you here. So Elle will pull that power out, and without any interruption, that just switched over. So you can see now the inverter's drawing off the battery, and that didn't interrupt this vacuum cleaner charging. So that's what we love about the AC transfer switch in the Renogy Inverter. That way when we're at a powered site, the inverter's not drawing off the battery and it's giving the battery a break while the 20 amp charger charges that battery up to 100%. So yeah, that's how we've done it, and it's working awesome for us. So with the fridge, the cabling for it runs from that the distribution block under the floor and to an Anderson plug under the sink here. And then, so basically just a few features. You can set obviously the dual zone, so the freezer and the fridge. So I think the fridge is set to 2, freezer set to -18. If you hold down this on button, it puts it on night mode. So not only does it get rid of the bright lights there, the compressor doesn't run to its full capacity. So instead of drawing about 5 amps when it's usually cycling, it'll only draw like 2. So it's a bit quieter as well and a bit more efficient. You can also adjust its like low voltage cutout and that sort of thing. Another thing, the door's reversible, so it can open up this way, and then it can also open up this way as well, which is really handy. So she's pretty full at the moment. And then it's got your freezer, which works exceptionally well. It freezes so good. And then your crisper at the bottom. And yeah, it's an awesome fridge. It's been running, we haven't turned it off since we left on our trip, and we're about 4 months in. So, and it's holding up really well. So up the bed end here, we've got our Sirocco fan. So it's on the end of the kitchen, and we just thought that's the best spot because it can go towards the bed and it can also go this way. And it's got 3 speeds. Oop. And it's super low power draw, uses bugger all, and it's also got your timers as well. So you've got a 3, 6, 9 and 12 hour timer. So in the kitchen, we added a little light up under there. It's just a little motion censored LED light. We got it off eBay. I think it was like $30 or something. So you charge it off USB and then it runs off itself. So, which is pretty handy, doesn't have to be plugged in. And it's got, motion sensor, or you can have it just on, and it's got 3 different color modes. So it's got like a warm white, a cool white, and then sort of one in between, which we like. And we did that because we chose to put warm white lights in the van. We just feel it's a little bit cozier. So these ones up here are a little 70mm round Nava light. So if we turn them on just from switch at the doorway, that turns them on. And there was no lights originally in this pop top, so it was only just the bed end and the dinette end. So Elle, do you want to show what lights we've got up under there? They're also Nava. They're a touch dimmable one. So you click it once and it's got a blue, just a night light. I'll just focus this. So when you click it a second time, it's the light. So if you click and hold, I'll go back to the light. If you click and hold, it'll dim it right down. Don't know if you can see that in the video, the way it's focusing. And then if you do it again, click and hold, it'll brighten it right up, which is good. And we chose to put them ones there without a switch, just touch dimmable, because you're so close to the ceiling, it's just easy enough to do that. And then other than, running a separate switch somewhere. So yeah, and they work really, really good. Then outside, we've got our little oyster light. We changed it from the original glass one because it's prone to breaking a bit easier, to a polycarbonate lens off vintage Caravan spares. To charge our phones and things, up the bed end, we've got this dual USB and SIG socket port. So we usually just use this one to charge our phones up this end. We've also got one down here as well. So when we're working up this end, we can charge our phones, and we thought we added just a SIG socket there. So if we ever got like a little evaporative aircon or something that ran off that, we can use it there under the dinette area as well. I was going to mount another one of those here, but we sort of run out of time, and we've found we really don't need an extra one. We've got enough here anyways. We've also got one outside as well, so USB and SIG socket and a 10 amp outlet. So we sometimes use that one for the induction cooker outside here, or to charge our phones when we're outside. So you might be able to see in this video that the solar panels are just that bit too heavy for the original scissor struts of the roof, and every time we attempt to put it up, it just kept closing the roof down, which was very disappointing. So yesterday we got one of our panels mounted up. I'm a little bit spewing because we did buy 2 of these 170 watt panels from Roadtech Marine. The idea was to put 2 on here. They would fit perfect side by side, that way giving us 340 watts of solar. However, these scissor struts just aren't heavy enough to support the weight. It just, as soon as we put the second one on there, the whole roof just went straight down. So we have to go to 1 panel, and I might have to look at maybe selling the other one and just getting a flexible solar panel to lay out. But what we did was just use some rubber to mount them on, and then some 75 by 75 galvanized brackets, and then we bolted it through this 30 by 30 angle, and then tech screwed the panel into the, through the aluminium into the solar panel. So I'm just going to put a cable entry gland up here, just drill a couple of holes. So the way we did that was the holes are outside the pop top skirt, so no water's going to leak inside. So we'll do the same with the cable entry gland, bring it down through the wardrobe and then down under the bench seat into the BCDC. So that's all done. The waterproof gland is sealed down, screwed down through the top there. Cable comes out and then goes in on top of the pop top skirt there, down through the wardrobe and then into the BCDC charger under the bench seat. So after mounting that solar panel, even just the 1 panel, the roof still sags at the front and it doesn't come up all the way. It's a lot heavier to push up and it just didn't sit well with me. The fact that we couldn't put that second panel on. So I ended up driving into Bunnings in Orange and bought some 535mm 200 Newton gas struts. I'll just flip you around. So they will mount up under there like that, and that way that should handle the weight of the second panel and keep that roof up a bit higher. So we're going to try and do that now and just see how we get on. So for the bottom brackets, what I've done is just use those same Goliath angled brackets there and cut this bottom piece off. So they'll just screw to the pop top collar, and then I'll utilise the original brackets it came with, or not that it came with, but the original brackets like these for the top of the pop top. So I've just marked them out now. I'm just going to go screw these bottom ones in, and then we can work out the top angle and screw the top ones in. So I've just screwed on that first strut. You can see up under there, and I just moved that bit of RHS out of the way, and it's still nice and tight. It hasn't sagged at all. So you can see the front sagged a fair bit. I don't know if you can really see in there. It's very bad at the front. So I'm going to try and do the front now. So I'm going around from the edge of the pop top collar back. I'm marked, I think it's like 470 to the start of that bracket. I think that angle should be right. I think it's about 10-ish degrees. So I hope that's going to close okay. Guess we'll see, and if not, we can just move it over a little bit. But fingers crossed it all works first go. So I'll go around and do these other ones now. Alright, so huge success. We've got both our solar panels on now, which I'll show you soon. And we've got the gas struts installed, and I'll get Elle to give you a demo of opening it. It's so much easier to open now. You do have to push one end up first. Just like that. The skirt's a lot more tight now. It was sagging a fair bit before, and that was only with 1 panel on. Even without the panels, it still was never perfect, but it's sitting, heaps better now. Righto, so just to give you another look, So this is what it looks like with the 2 panels on. I actually got this idea from Bluey the Millard. So he's been an awesome resource for us and our Caravan Renos. So I'll link his social media handle here to check out his page. He's done an awesome job of his little 78 Millard. I think he's a 78. So thanks heaps for all the ideas, mate. I really appreciate it. You've done an awesome job of yours and should be super proud. So we sort of adopted the same idea, and it's worked out really well. So wouldn't have been able to do it without seeing yours. So no, we really appreciate it. That's all worked good. It's all up off there. So that's the tightest I could get these. It's sort of a bit bulky, but anyway. So it goes through this waterproof gland, cable gland, and then runs up through the top of the pop-top skirt, down through the wardrobe. And just before, even though the sun was kind of over there, wasn't directly above, it was putting out 10 amps. So it's doubling what it was doing before with the same amount of light. Interesting to see what it would be like with the sun directly above. But yeah, no, really happy with that now. So these 2 170 watt solar panels we bought from Renogy Marine. These are the specs. So they're rated to put out 9.45 amps each. So that's roughly about what my King's 160 watt panel puts out, and I've seen it put out 10 amps. So hopefully these 2 together can put out close to that 18 amp mark. I'd be pretty stoked. So at the moment it's 10 past 9 in the morning, and it's putting in, both those panels are putting in 7.25 amps. So hopefully once the sun's up, directly above it, it can put out its full capacity, but I'll have to have a look and see. But yeah, that's awesome. Charging the battery up. Well, thanks heaps for tuning into this episode, guys. We hope it's helped you in some way or given you a few ideas. We definitely aren't professionals at this, so I'm sure there's probably better ways of doing things, but this is how we've done it, and it's been working really great. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next episode where we install our diesel heater. We'll give you a few tips and tricks with that one as well, so that'll probably drop next week, hopefully. Don't forget to like and subscribe, as well as hitting that bell icon to be notified for future videos. Anyways, guys, we'll catch you in the next one.